The Korean mafia heir froze in shock when he saw his ex-girlfriend at the restaurant holding a baby. But when the 8-month-old child looked directly at him with his same dark, piercing eyes, his entire world shattered. He built an empire on blood and silence. She carried his secret for 9 months alone. Tonight, in a crowded restaurant, their eyes meet across the impossible distance between who he became and who he could have been. One smile from a child he never knew existed will shatter the walls he built to keep her safe. This is the story of a man who ruled the underworld, until love reminded him what it means to be human. Hello, everyone. I'm back with more Afro-Korean stories. Today, I'll tell you a beautiful story you won't forget anytime soon. But before we begin, I'd like to wish you all a wonderful day. Now, let's get to the story, and don't forget to subscribe. The restaurant hummed with the kind of quiet wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Crystal caught light like trapped stars. Conversations floated in whispers. Jin-woo Kim sat at his usual corner table, the one that gave him a view of every entrance, every exit, every face that might carry a threat. At 29, he'd learned that survival wasn't about strength. It was about seeing danger before it saw you. His bodyguards flanked the perimeter, invisible, professional, armed with the kind of presence that made people choose different tables without knowing why. He didn't come here to eat. He came here to be seen, to remind the city's elite that even in their world of old money and older names, there were empires built on different foundations. Darker ones. More enduring. The wine arrived. He didn't touch it. He never did. His father had taught him that pleasure was a luxury men like them couldn't afford. Every moment of weakness was a moment someone could strike. Then she walked in. Jin-woo's hand froze halfway to the glass. For 3 seconds, the world stopped spinning. The noise died. The light changed. Everything narrowed to the woman standing near the host's podium, her dark skin glowing against the restaurant's amber warmth, her natural curls framing a face he'd memorized in another lifetime. Maya. She looked different. Older. Not in years, but in the way pain ages people from the inside out. She wore a simple dress. Nothing like the expensive things he used to buy her, back when he thought money could protect her from what he was. Back when he was stupid enough to believe love and his world could coexist. She hadn't seen him yet. Her attention was focused on the bundle in her arms. A baby. Maybe 8 months old. The child's tiny hand gripped her finger, and something in Jin-woo's chest cracked open like ice breaking under spring sun. He'd ended it a year ago. Cleanly, cruelly. The way his father taught him to cut away anything that could be used against him. He'd watched her cry and hadn't let himself feel it. He'd walked away and told himself it was mercy. That she'd be safer hating him than loving him. Now she was here. And she'd moved on. Of course she had. Women like Maya didn't wait for men like him. They found someone better. Someone whose hands weren't stained with the kind of work that kept empires standing. The host led her to a table. Jin-woo's table. Close enough that he could hear her soft thank you, could smell the faint scent of vanilla that always clung to her skin. His bodyguard, Dae, shifted slightly, sensing his tension. Jin-woo gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Stand down. Maya settled the baby in her lap, adjusting a blanket with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The child babbled something incomprehensible and joyful. She smiled at him. The baby. Jin-woo couldn't tell if it was a boy or girl from this distance. Then the child turned. Looked directly at him with eyes that stopped Jin-woo's heart mid-beat. Dark eyes. Not just dark. His eyes. The same shade of black-brown that stared back at him from mirrors in expensive penthouses and blood-stained basements. Eyes that carried weight even before they understood what weight was. The baby smiled. A pure, uncomplicated expression that belonged to someone who didn't know yet that the world was a dangerous place, that some fathers were better as ghosts than guardians. Jin-woo stood. He didn't remember deciding to. His body moved on instinct, crossing the space between their tables in 4 strides. Day followed at a discreet distance, ready for whatever this was about to become. Maya looked up. Their eyes met. He watched recognition flicker across her face, followed by something harder. Fear. Not of him. For him. Or maybe for the child. Jinwoo. His name in her mouth sounded like a prayer and a curse. Maya. He couldn't say more. His voice didn't work properly. His throat had closed around a question that would change everything. The baby reached toward him, tiny fingers grasping at air, at possibility, at a future Jinwoo had never imagined. Up close, there was no denying it. The shape of the nose, the set of the jaw. Features still soft with infancy but already carrying the blueprint of who they'd become. Is that... He couldn't finish, couldn't ask, because asking made it real, and real meant decisions, and decisions meant breaking every rule his father had ever taught him about separating family from the empire. Her name is Arya. Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she held the child. Their child. His daughter. She's 8 months old. Mathematics wasn't his strongest subject, but he could count, could trace backward to the last night they'd spent together, when he'd loved her like it was the last time, because he'd already decided it would be. Before he'd ghosted her completely. Before he'd chosen the empire over everything that made him human. He should leave. Walk away. Pretend he hadn't seen. That was the smart play. The safe play. Everything his father had built depended on clean lines between business and weakness. Children were leverage. Love was a vulnerability. Families were targets. But Arya's small hand had wrapped around his finger when he'd reached out without thinking, and now he couldn't remember why walking away had ever seemed possible. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out harder than he meant. People at nearby tables glanced over. Day moved closer, a subtle reminder that even here, even now, Jinwoo's world came with guards and consequences. Maya's jaw tightened. Would it have changed anything? You made yourself very clear about what I meant to you, about what we were. She kept her voice low, controlled, but he heard the anger underneath. The kind that had been burning for months. You don't get to walk away and then ask questions when it's convenient. She was right. He knew she was right. He'd destroyed them because that was what men in his position did. They chose the empire. Always. His father had done it. His grandfather before him. The Kim family's power was built on sacrifice, and personal happiness was always the first offering. I was protecting you. The word sounded hollow even to him. From what? Maya shifted Arya higher on her hip. The baby watched him with unsettling focus, as if she could see past the expensive suit to the man who'd made her mother cry. From your world? I'm raising your daughter alone in a city where your enemies would love to know you have a weakness. You think I'm safer because you're not here? The logic hit him like a bullet. She wasn't safe. She'd never been safe. He'd just convinced himself that distance equaled protection, when really it had only meant she faced the danger without him. How did you manage? He needed to know. Needed to understand how she'd survived 9 months of pregnancy, birth, sleepless nights. All while he'd been building his empire wider, deeper, more untouchable. I work. I have friends. We manage. She said it simply, but he saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried. You don't need to worry about us. We're fine. They weren't fine. He could see it in the worn edges of her purse, the careful way she'd chosen this restaurant because it was nice enough to feel special, but not so expensive she couldn't afford it. She was surviving. But surviving wasn't the same as thriving. And his daughter deserved more than survival. Let me help. No. Fast. Certain. I didn't tell you because I don't want your help. I don't want your money or your guilt or your complicated, dangerous life anywhere near her. Arya chose that moment to laugh, reaching for the small silver pendant that hung from Jinwoo's neck. A gift from his father on his 18th birthday. The day he'd officially entered the family business. The day he'd stopped being a boy and became something else. His daughter's fingers closed around it, and he felt the pull. Not just physical. Deeper. like she was trying to drag him back to something human. She has my eyes. He said it quietly, almost to himself. She has more than that. Maya's voice softened slightly, and for a moment, he saw past her anger to the woman he'd loved. Still loved, if he was honest, which he tried not to be. Honesty was another luxury men like him couldn't afford. She's stubborn. Doesn't sleep unless she's being held. Smiles at strangers like the world is safe. It's not. The words came automatically. His whole life had been learning that lesson, teaching it to others. I know. Maya met his eyes fully then, and he saw she understood exactly what he was, what he'd always been. That's why I'm teaching her to be careful, to trust her instincts, to know that love doesn't always look like fairy tales. The waiter appeared, oblivious to the emotional warfare happening at the table. Can I get you anything, sir? Jinwoo looked at Maya. She looked back. Some conversation was happening in the silence between them. An entire negotiation conducted in glances and the weight of shared history. He's not staying, Maya said. But Jinwoo pulled out the chair across from her, sat down, waved the waiter away. Dae's expression didn't change, but Jinwoo knew he was already running scenarios, calculating risks, wondering if his boss had finally lost his mind. Maybe he had. Because sitting here, watching his daughter try to eat a piece of bread that was bigger than her fist, felt more important than the meeting he was supposed to be at. More important than the territory dispute that needed his attention. More important than the empire his family had built over 3 generations. One dinner, he said. That's all I'm asking. Maya studied him, looking for the trick, the angle, the way this would benefit him and hurt her. He didn't blame her for the suspicion. He'd earned every bit of it. Why? Because she's mine. Simple, true, dangerous. And because I made a mistake. You made a choice. Same thing. Arya dropped her bread. Jinwoo picked it up before Maya could, their fingers brushing in the exchange. The touch lasted half a second, but felt like coming home after a war he'd been fighting alone. One dinner, Maya finally agreed. But after tonight, you go back to your world and we stay in ours. That was the deal you made when you left. He should agree. Should take the gift she was offering and not push for more. But looking at his daughter, he knew one dinner would never be enough. They ordered food neither of them ate. The plates arrived like props in a play they were pretending to perform. Normalcy. Civility. As if he hadn't built his fortune on fear. As if she hadn't built her strength on surviving him. Arya was the only honest thing at the table. She babbled and laughed and reached for everything shiny, unaware that her existence had just redrawn every boundary Jinwoo thought was permanent. Does she have everything she needs? He asked it carefully, knowing Maya's pride would make her lie if he pushed too hard. We're managing. That word again. Managing. He hated it. Hated what it implied. Hated that his child was merely managing when he could give her everything. Don't. Maya's voice carried a warning. Don't make promises you'll break when your world gets complicated again. Don't show up with money and think that fixes what you destroyed. I'm not trying to fix anything. He watched Arya grab at his watch, her small fingers surprisingly strong. I'm trying to understand what I'm supposed to do now. Nothing. You do nothing. We agreed. You agreed. I didn't know. His jaw tightened. If I'd known... What? You would have stayed? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You would have chosen us over the Empire? Over your father's legacy? Over everything you've built? He wanted to say yes, wanted to believe he was capable of that kind of sacrifice. But they both knew the truth. Men like him didn't choose love over power. They chose power and called it protection. My father would never allow it. The admission felt like weakness, like failure. A child outside the family's control, it's dangerous, I know. Maya wiped Arya's mouth with practiced gentleness. Why do you think I didn't tell you? Why do you think I've been careful about where we go, who we see? Your world doesn't get to touch her. But it already had. The moment his eyes met hers across this restaurant, the moment recognition had sparked, everything had changed. His enemies were smart. They watched. They waited. They looked for exactly this kind of weakness. You need protection. He said it as fact, not request. I need you to leave us alone. That's not an option anymore. It's the only option. Maya's voice rose slightly, drawing glances. She lowered it immediately, years of survival teaching her that attention was dangerous. You can't just decide you matter now. You can't walk back into her life whenever guilt gets too heavy. This isn't guilt. He leaned forward, keeping his voice low despite the urgency building in his chest. Someone will notice. Someone will connect the dots, and when they do, then we'll disappear. We've done it before. The words hit him harder than any threat ever had. She'd run before, been prepared to run again, living in constant fear because of him, because of what he was, because his love had always come with a price she'd refused to pay. Arya reached for him again, her small hand landing on his cheek. Her palm was warm, sticky from the bread. Completely trusting. She had no idea that her father was a monster in expensive clothing, that men crossed streets to avoid him, that his name was whispered like a curse in certain parts of the city. She just saw him, smiled at him, like he was capable of being more than what he'd become. I can keep you safe. He caught her tiny hand gently, his thumb brushing across knuckles that would someday grow strong, would someday maybe look like his. Both of you. I have resources, people. I can make sure no one touches you. And what does that cost? Maya's eyes were hard now, knowing. What do we become if we accept your protection, your property? Your leverage against enemies? What kind of life is that for her? A living one. He said it bluntly, because sometimes truth was the only weapon that worked. You think you're safer alone? You think my enemies won't find out eventually? At least with me you have a chance. With you we have a target on our backs. You already do. He hated saying it, hated the fear that flashed across her face. The moment I looked at her, the moment anyone in this restaurant saw me at this table, the clock started. My world doesn't forgive secrets. It hunts them. Maya's hand trembled as she pulled Arya closer. Protective. Fierce. Everything a mother should be when facing a threat she couldn't fight alone. Then what do you suggest? Her voice was tight, controlled. But he heard the crack underneath, the moment where survival instinct was overriding pride. Come with me. Tonight. I have a place. Secure. No one will know. And then what? We become prisoners in a gilded cage? She grows up surrounded by guards and guns in your father's world? She grows up alive. He let the words sit between them, heavy, undeniable. That's all I can promise, but it's more than you have now. The restaurant continued its quiet hum around them. Other diners laughed, clinked glasses, celebrated whatever normal people celebrated. Birthdays, anniversaries, promotions. Simple joys that people in Jinwoo's world had forgotten existed. Maya looked at Arya, then at him, calculating, weighing, trying to find the trap in his offer because there was always a trap. One night, she finally said. We stay one night. You prove you can keep us safe without strings, without ownership. And then I decide. It wasn't agreement. It wasn't trust. But it was a door opening, and Jinwoo had built his empire on knowing when to push through doors and when to wait for them to open wider. One night, he agreed. He stood, extended his hand. Maya hesitated, then took it, letting him help her up while she balanced Arya on her hip. The touch lasted longer than necessary. His fingers lingered on hers, feeling the calluses that hadn't been there a year ago. Evidence of how hard she'd worked to survive without him. Day moved forward, speaking into his wrist mic. Within seconds, the restaurant's back exit was being secured. Cars repositioned. Routes planned. The machinery of Jinwoo's world clicking into place around them. As they walked toward the exit, Arya rested her head on Maya's shoulder, watching him with those two knowing eyes. And Jinwoo realized he'd just made the most dangerous decision of his life. Not because his enemies would use them against him, but because for the first time in 10 years, he'd chosen something more important than the Empire. And men who made choices like that didn't usually survive them. The penthouse sat 40 floors above the city's noise. Floor-to-ceiling windows turned the skyline into a glittering backdrop, but Maya didn't look at the view. She stood in the center of the living room, holding Arya like a shield, taking in the armed men positioned at every exit, the security cameras, the reinforced doors that turned luxury into a fortress. "This is your safe place?" Her voice carried an edge he recognized, the same tone she'd used when he'd first told her what he really did, before love had made her stupid enough to think she could save him. "It's secure." Jinwoo dismissed Dae with a gesture. His head of security hesitated, clearly unhappy about leaving them alone, but obeyed. The door clicked shut with the finality of a vault ceiling. "No one knows about this apartment. Not my father. Not my associates. Just me. And now us." Maya shifted Arya, who'd fallen asleep during the drive. Her small body warm and heavy with trust Maya wasn't sure she should have given. "You brought us to your secret. That makes us dangerous, doesn't it?" He crossed to the bar, poured himself whiskey he wouldn't drink. Old habits. His hands needed something to do when his mind was racing. "It makes you protected. Same thing in your world." She wasn't wrong. In his world, protection and imprisonment wore the same face. Love and leverage felt identical. He'd watched his father use both interchangeably until Jinwoo couldn't tell the difference anymore. "There's a bedroom down the hall. Queen bed, crib already set up." He'd made the call during the drive. His people were efficient. They didn't ask questions when he demanded a fully equipped nursery appear in an apartment that had never housed a child. "You'll be comfortable." "Comfortable?" Maya laughed, but it came out broken. "Is that what you think I need? Comfort? I think you need sleep. Real sleep. Not the kind where you wake up every hour wondering if someone's found you. Not the kind where every car door slamming outside makes you check that the locks still hold." Her face went still. That's how he knew he was right. She'd been living in fear for months, and pride had kept her from admitting it, from asking for help, from telling him that his child existed in a world where his enemies would kill to know about her. "How long have you known someone was watching?" He asked it gently, the way you'd approach something wounded and cornered. 3 weeks. She walked to the window, careful to stay back from the glass, another survival instinct he recognized. A car that appeared too often. A man at the grocery store who didn't buy anything. Could be nothing. Could be someone connecting dots. Jinwoo set down the glass untouched, crossed to her in 3 strides, close enough to see the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the weight she'd been carrying alone. "Why didn't you run?" "Where?" The question was simple, devastating. "You think I have resources to disappear? To start over somewhere your world can't find us?" "I'm a graphic designer, Jinwoo. I work freelance. I have maybe 3,000 in savings and a daughter who needs formula and diapers and a future that doesn't involve looking over her shoulder forever." He'd given her that future once, when he'd walked away, when he'd thought leaving would keep her safe. Instead, he'd just left her defenseless. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, too small for the damage he'd caused. You thought leaving was noble, that cutting me off was protection, that I'd be fine because I wasn't in your world anymore." Her voice cracked, and Arya stirred in her arms, sensing the tension. Maya lowered her voice to a fierce whisper. "But you can't just love someone from your world and expect them to be safe when you leave. Your shadow doesn't disappear because you walk away. It just means I faced it alone." Every word was a knife, and he deserved each cut. He'd been trained to accept pain, to compartmentalize, to lock away anything that made him vulnerable. But standing here, watching the woman he'd loved hold the child he'd created, every defense he'd built crumbled. "Let me fix it." He said it knowing she'd resist. Knowing pride and pain wouldn't let her accept easily. "Not the past. I can't change that. But the future. Let me make sure she grows up safe." At what cost? Maya's eyes were hard, knowing. What do you want in exchange? Visitation rights? Control over her life? A claim on her future? I want her alive. Simple, true. That's all. I want her to grow up without fear. To smile at strangers because the world hasn't taught her yet that some people are dangerous. To have the childhood I never got. Arya chose that moment to wake, her small hand reaching up to touch Maya's face, then turning to look at him with those devastating eyes. His eyes. She didn't cry. Just watched him with the kind of assessment that seemed impossible for an 8-month-old. She looks at you like she knows you. Maya's voice had softened slightly. Like she's been waiting for you to show up. Babies don't remember. No. But maybe some part of her recognizes what she came from. Maya shifted Arya so she could see him better. You want to be in her life? Then you need to understand something. I won't let you be half in. I won't let you show up when it's convenient and disappear when your world gets complicated. She deserves better than a ghost for a father. I know. Do you? The challenge in her voice was clear. Because being her father means choosing her. Every day. Over the Empire. Over your father's approval. Over everything you've built. Can you do that? The question hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled, because they both knew the answer. Men like him didn't choose family over power. The Kim Empire had been built on 3 generations of sacrifice, and personal happiness was always what got sacrificed first. But looking at Arya, at the way she smiled at him like he was capable of being someone better, Jinwoo felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 20 years starting to thaw. I don't know. He said it honestly. I don't know if I can be what she needs, what you need. But I know I can't walk away again. I know that the moment I saw her, everything I thought mattered became smaller. And I know that if something happened to either of you because I wasn't there to stop it, I wouldn't survive that. Maya studied him, looking for the lie, the angle, the way this would benefit him and destroy them. He let her look, let her see past the expensive suit and the reputation and the walls he'd built to whatever was left underneath. 1 week, she finally said. We stay 1 week. You prove you can balance your world and hers, that you can keep us safe without making us prisoners. That you can be a father and not just a protector. And then I'll decide if we stay, or if we disappear so far into the world that even your resources can't find us. It was more than he deserved, more than he'd hoped for. A chance to prove he could be something other than what his father had made him. 1 week, he agreed. Arya laughed then, reaching for him with both hands, and Jinwoo discovered that some weapons were more devastating than any his world had taught him to use. Because when he took his daughter in his arms for the first time, really held her, felt her small heart beating against his chest, he realized he'd just given his enemies the perfect target. And he didn't care. The call came at 3 a.m. Jinwoo answered on the first ring, already moving toward his office before Day finished speaking. Maya appeared in the doorway, wearing one of his shirts, Arya asleep against her shoulder. What's wrong? Business. He kept his voice low, already pulling on the armor of who he had to be. Nothing that concerns you. Don't. She crossed the space between them. Don't shut me out and pretend it's protection. If we're doing this, if we're trying to make this work, then I need to know when your world is bleeding into ours. He should lie, should keep her separate from the ugliness of what he did. But he'd promised honesty, or at least as much as he was capable of giving. There's a situation, a rival family making moves on our territory. My father wants me there. Now. Then go. If I leave... He looked at Arya, still sleeping, completely unaware that her existence had just made everything more complicated. Someone needs to know you're here. Someone I trust. In case something goes wrong. You mean in case you don't come back. He didn't deny it. Men in his position didn't make guarantees about tomorrow. They made arrangements for the people left behind. Day will stay. He's been with me for 10 years. Loyal. Capable. If anything happens, he'll get you out. There's money, new identities, everything you'd need to disappear. Maya's hand tightened on Arya. You're talking about contingencies, about what happens if you die. I'm talking about being realistic. He crossed to his safe, pulled out documents he'd prepared during the 2 hours she'd been asleep. Bank accounts, passports, instructions. This is the world I live in. This is what choosing me means. Sometimes I walk out that door and don't know if I'm coming back. Then don't go. Her voice was fierce, desperate. Tell them you can't, that you have something more important. They know about you. He said it quietly, watching her face go pale. Not everything. Not about Arya yet. But someone saw us at the restaurant. Asked questions. My father wants to know who you are. Why I brought you here. Why I'm suddenly changing patterns I've held for 10 years. What did you tell him? Nothing, yet. But I can't avoid him forever. And when I do face him, I need to be in a position of strength. This meeting tonight, it's about showing I'm still committed. Still the heir he raised. Still choosing the Empire over everything else. Are you? The question was soft, dangerous. Are you still choosing the Empire? He looked at his daughter, at the woman holding her, at the life he'd never imagined having and now couldn't imagine losing. I'm choosing survival. He cupped Maya's face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Mine, yours, hers. That means playing the game until I can change the rules. Can you understand that? I understand you're asking me to watch you walk into danger and trust that you'll come back. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. I understand that loving you means accepting that every goodbye might be permanent. I understand that our daughter will grow up wondering if today's the day her father doesn't come home. Yes. Simple. True. Devastating. That's exactly what I'm asking. She should refuse. Should take Arya and leave while he was gone. Should choose the safe life over the complicated one. He could see the calculation in her eyes, the moment where survival instinct warred with whatever she still felt for him. Come back. She said it like a command, like she had any control over what happened when he left. Whatever it takes. Whatever you have to do, you come back to her. Not to me, he noticed. To her. Always protecting their daughter first. It was what made her a good mother. What would make her strong enough to survive his world if she chose to stay in it. He kissed her. Soft, brief, tasting like goodbye and promise and everything they'd never been able to say to each other. Then he kissed Arya's forehead, breathing in that baby smell of milk and innocence. 1 week, he reminded Maya. You gave me 1 week to prove I can do this. Don't leave before then. 1 week, she agreed. But he heard the doubt underneath. The fear that he wouldn't survive the night. That she'd wake up today telling her to pack, to run. That Jin-Woo Kim had finally paid the price his world demanded. He left them standing in his office, surrounded by the evidence of his empire. Walked out into the pre-dawn darkness where his car waited. Day fell into step beside him. She's strong, his head of security said quietly. Stronger than you expected. She'd have to be, to survive me. Jin-Woo slid into the back seat. If something happens tonight, I know. Get them out. New lives. Complete disappear. Day's expression was grim. For what it's worth, boss, I think you're making the right choice. Family over empire. It's what any sane man would do. Then it's good I've never claimed to be sane. Jin-Woo watched his building disappear in the rearview mirror, just capable of learning, eventually. The drive to his father's estate took 40 minutes. Long enough for Jin-Woo to put away the man who'd held his daughter and become the heir his father expected. Cold, calculating, willing to do whatever the empire demanded. But as he walked into the meeting where rival families gathered to discuss territory and blood, he felt the weight of Arya's hand on his cheek. Heard Maya's voice commanding him to come back. And for the first time in his life, Jin-Woo Kim entered his father's world knowing he had something to lose. It made him dangerous in ways his father had never taught him. because men with nothing to lose followed orders, but men protecting their families rewrote the rules. He came back at dawn. Maya heard the door before she saw him, was already moving toward the entrance with her heart in her throat, terrified she'd find Day instead, bringing news that would shatter everything. But it was Jinwoo, alive, whole, though his knuckles were bruised and there was something harder in his eyes than had been there when he left. "You're bleeding." She reached for his hand without thinking. "It's not mine." He said it simply, and she understood what that meant. What he'd done to come back to them. "Where's Arya?" "Sleeping. She's been down for 2 hours." Maya pulled him toward the kitchen, ran his hands under cold water, watched the evidence of his world spiral down the drain. "What happened?" "I made a choice." He let her clean his knuckles, her touch gentle on skin that had delivered violence hours before. "Told my father about you. About her. About the fact that I'm not walking away this time." Her hands stilled. "What did he say?" "That I'm weak, that children are leverage. That bringing you into my world puts a target on all of us." Jinwoo's jaw tightened. "That I'm no longer welcome as his heir if I insist on this path." Maya's breath caught. "He disowned you?" "He gave me a choice. The Empire or you, power or family. Everything I've built or everything I could have." His eyes met hers, and she saw the truth there. The decision that would change all their lives. "I chose you." Jinwoo. She didn't know if it was protest or plea. "You can't just walk away from that world. You said it yourself. Men like you don't get to leave. Men like I was." He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "But maybe I can become someone different. Someone who builds something that doesn't require blood to maintain. Someone my daughter can be proud of instead of afraid of. Your father won't let you go easily. I know. There'll be challenges. Tests. People who think I'm vulnerable now and want to prove it." His arms tightened around her. "But I have resources. Loyal people. And I have something my father never understood. I have a reason to survive that's stronger than power." Arya's cry cut through the moment. Soft. Sleepy. The sound of a baby waking up to a world she still thought was safe. Maya moved to go to her, but Jinwoo caught her hand. "Let me." He said it quietly. "Let me be her father. Not just her protector. Not just the man who keeps the danger away. Let me be the one who goes to her when she cries. Who teaches her that even in the dark, someone will always come." Maya's throat tightened. "You're really doing this. Walking away from everything." "I'm walking toward something better." He kissed her once, soft and sure. "Toward a life where she grows up knowing her father. Where you don't have to be afraid every time I leave. Where we build something that doesn't cost us our souls to maintain." She watched him walk down the hall toward Arya's room. Watched this man who'd commanded empires move with careful gentleness as he lifted their daughter from her crib. Heard his voice, low and soothing, promising things in Korean that Maya didn't understand, but felt in the tender way he held their child. The next 3 days passed in a strange suspension of reality. Jinwoo worked from the penthouse, making calls that restructured his holdings, that separated legitimate businesses from the empire his father controlled. Maya watched him build something new, watched him choose them over and over again with each decision that cut ties to his old life. But she also saw the cost. Saw the tension in his shoulders when certain calls came through. Saw the way Day's expression grew grimmer each day as reports came in about his father's response. The Kim patriarch wasn't accepting his son's defection quietly. "He's moving against your assets," Day reported on the 4th morning, his voice tight with concern. "Businesses you thought were protected. People who were loyal to you are being given choices. Him or you." Jinwoo didn't look surprised. He sat at his desk, Arya playing at his feet with blocks he'd ordered online, completely unaware that her existence had started a war. "How many have chosen him?" 70%. "The ones who stayed with you are mostly younger generation, people who don't remember how things were built, who think there might be a different way." "There is a different way." Jinwoo's voice was certain. We prove it by surviving, by building something that doesn't require fear to maintain loyalty. That's a nice philosophy, boss. But philosophy doesn't stop bullets. Maya felt ice in her veins. She'd been living in a bubble, pretending that Jinwoo's choice had made them safe. But safety was an illusion in his world, his former world, the one that wasn't letting him go without a fight. What are our options? Jinwoo asked, already in strategy mode. Already calculating how to protect them while building something new. We could leave the city, set up somewhere his reach doesn't extend as far. You have holdings in Seattle, San Francisco, places where you could rebuild without his shadow. Running. Jinwoo said it like the word tasted bitter. That's what you're suggesting, that we run. I'm suggesting we survive. Dee's expression was grim. Your father won't stop until he's proven you made the wrong choice, until he's shown everyone that family is weakness. That love makes you vulnerable. He'll come after everything you've built, and when that's not enough, he'll come after them. Jinwoo's hand tightened on his pen. Maya saw the moment the reality hit him, the moment he understood that choosing his family hadn't freed them. It had just made them targets. How long do we have? His voice was steady, but Maya heard the undercurrent of fear. Not for himself. Never for himself. For them. A week, maybe 2. He's being strategic. Dismantling your empire piece by piece, making you watch it crumble, making you question if they were worth it. Arya laughed, stacking blocks into a tower that immediately fell. She clapped her hands, delighted by the destruction, by the way things could break and be rebuilt. Jinwoo watched her with an expression Maya had never seen before. Fierce. Protective. Absolutely certain. They're worth it. He said it quietly, but with the weight of a man who'd made his choice and wouldn't be moved. Everything I built, everything I was, none of it matters as much as this. As her. As the chance to be something more than what my father made me. Even if it costs you everything? Especially then. Jinwoo stood, crossed to where Maya stood frozen in the doorway, pulled her close with Arya between them. Because what's the point of an empire if you're alone in it? What's the point of power if everyone you love is afraid of you? My father built something that will outlast him, but he'll die surrounded by people who respect him and no one who loves him. That's not the legacy I want. Maya felt tears on her cheeks. You're really choosing us. Every day. He kissed her forehead. Every hour. For as long as you'll let me. Your father will come for us. Then we'll be ready. Jinwoo's voice hardened slightly, the old hymn bleeding through. The part that knew how to survive in a world that ate the weak. I'm not the naive boy who thought walking away would keep you safe. I know now that safety isn't distance. It's preparation, strategy, being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters. Even if that means becoming what you're trying to leave behind? The question hung between them, heavy, unavoidable. Because they both knew the truth. You couldn't completely leave a world like his. You could only choose what you'd fight for when the fighting started. I'll do what I have to do. Jinwoo's eyes were hard, certain. But I'll do it for different reasons. Not for power, not for empire, for her, for you. For the chance to give her a life where she doesn't have to be afraid. Day cleared his throat. Boss, we need to make decisions. Seattle or San Francisco. Or somewhere else entirely. We need to move while we still can. Jinwoo looked at Maya. Really looked. Asking a question without words. Giving her the choice he'd never given her before. Stay and fight, or run and rebuild. She thought about Arya. About the life she wanted for their daughter. About what it meant to run versus what it cost to stay. About whether love was enough when the world was built on violence. We stay. She said it firmly, surprising herself. We don't run. We don't give him the satisfaction of watching us scatter. We stay and we fight, and we prove that there's another way. That you can leave that world and survive. That family isn't weakness. Jinwoo's expression shifted. Pride, fear, love, all of it mixed into something too complex to name. You understand what that means? What staying costs? I understand that running means looking over our shoulders forever, that it means teaching Arya to be afraid, that it means your father wins even if he never touches us. Maya's voice was steady despite the fear churning in her gut. I understand that if we're going to do this, if we're going to build a life together, it has to be built on something stronger than survival. It has to be built on choice. Then we stay. Jinwoo turned to Dae. Cancel the contingencies, we're not running. Start reaching out to everyone who stayed loyal. Tell them we're building something new, something better. Tell them there's another way, and we're going to prove it. And when your father moves against us, then we show him that the empire he built isn't the only kind of power that matters. Jinwoo's smile was sharp, dangerous. That loyalty earned through respect is stronger than loyalty earned through fear. That the next generation isn't interested in ruling through violence. Dae nodded slowly. This is either the bravest thing you've ever done or the stupidest. Probably both. Jinwoo looked down at Arya, who'd abandoned her blocks to pull herself up using his leg, standing on wobbly legs and grinning like she'd conquered the world. But she's worth it. They both are. The week passed in careful preparation. Jinwoo restructured his remaining holdings, brought in people he trusted, built a network based on something other than fear. Maya watched him transform from crime lord to businessman, watched him prove that the intelligence and strategy that had built an empire could build something else, something clean. But she also saw him prepare for war. Saw the security measures that turned the penthouse into a fortress. Saw the way Dae and his team moved with heightened alertness. Saw Jinwoo teaching her exit routes, safe words, protocols for if everything went wrong. You think he'll really come for us? She asked on the 7th night, the deadline of their original agreement. I know he will. Jinwoo didn't sugarcoat it. The question is when and how, whether he'll be subtle or make a statement, whether he'll try to bring me back or make an example of what happens to sons who betray the empire. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Keeps you alive. He pulled her close, his hand gentle on her back despite the hardness in his voice. But don't let it make you weak. Don't let it make you regret choosing this. Choosing us. I don't regret it. She said it truthfully. I'm terrified, but I don't regret it. Arya slept in her crib nearby, peaceful and unaware. Tomorrow would be day 8. One day past the week Maya had promised. One day into their new life. One day closer to whatever reckoning Jinwoo's father had planned. But tonight, they were together. Safe. Building something that didn't require blood to maintain. Proving that even in a world built on violence, love could be stronger than fear. Whatever comes, Jinwoo whispered against her hair, we face it together. No more walking away. No more protecting you by leaving. We stand together or we fall together. Together, Maya agreed. And in the morning, when Arya woke them with her laughter, when sunlight turned the city golden, when Jinwoo held his daughter and looked at Maya like she was worth every empire he'd sacrificed, they started building their new world. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one family at a time. Until the empire of fear his father built became just a memory, and something better rose in its place. The end.